Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So this information session will be covering the progress update, or the PU, as well as the financial closure report. My name is Emily Hatt. I'm part of the operational efficiency team on the Global Funds, and I'll be taking you through the presentation today along with my colleague Darius. So Darius, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Emily. My name is Darius Highorn, and I'm also part of the operational efficiency team at the Global Fund and really excited to be here with you today. Thank you for making the time in your busy schedules. We appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks, Darius. So Frida, if we can move forward. Great, thank you. So yeah, just before we begin, just wanted to say a big thank you. It takes a lot of different people, a lot of different teams to put together a launch such as this. So this is just us giving a shout out to everyone who's been involved and collaborating so far. So just a big thank you, but also a thank you to you, the PRs. Thank you for all the hard work and collaboration that it took to submit the pulse checks. We saw the pulse checks submitted on time and with high quality. So we really appreciate all the coordination and all the efforts that went behind that. So thank you. So just to take you through the agenda of what we'll be going through today, this will be broken up into two different sessions. The first session will be on implementation oversight in the PU. And then we'll have time for questions at the end of that. We'll have a question and answer period. Then we'll take a short 5-minute break, and then we'll go into the second session. So you might have seen this outlined in the partner portal invitations, but the second session will be specifically focused on closure and the financial closure report. So this is for anyone who has grants and closure. If you don't have any grants and closure, you can feel free to drop off the call after the question and answer period from the first session. And both sessions will be recorded and posted on the website later as well. But if you do have a grant and closure and you want to stick around, we will have a question and answer period at the end of that session as well. So taking you through the agenda for the first part of the session, which will be the first hour and a half. We'll focus on I/O, so we'll look at the implementation oversight or PR reporting in 2024 and beyond. Then we'll zoom in on the progress update. We'll look at the content. Then we'll switch to look at what the PU looks like in Partner Portal. We'll take you through next steps and resources. Then we'll have times for question and answers, and then we'll take the short break. So if anyone does have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to add them to the chat, and our colleagues will collect them and we'll address them all during the question and answer portion of the presentation. With that, Darius, over to you.
Thanks so much, Emily. I'm going to start with just addressing some questions that had come up during or after the pulse check sessions. And I just want to share some good news here. In terms of the pulse check, it is, there were questions about that the pulse check is big like the PU and we're having multiple PUs throughout the year. It's actually not the case. The pulse check is significantly smaller as you would see through completing it. There are fewer tabs, fewer data points, fewer places where information is needed to be submitted. So the pulse check is on average about 70% or 80% smaller than the PU. And also the data points have been reduced for the PU compared to the prior PU. It's important to also note that there's 2 pulse checks now moving forward instead of 4, and also the data points within each of those pulse checks. So the burden of data points to report back to the Global Fund has dropped significantly. So we've removed entire sections, the PR self-reported section. So I just wanted to quickly start to kind of remind everyone on kind of some of the big changes in terms of removing some of the pulse checks and overall looking at the actual data points that are included in each of those different important reports. And in the next slide, I want to just also share a bit about why we are having all of these different reports throughout the year, including the quarterly reports. And I think the overarching reason is to improve data-driven decision making, to adjust and make interventions in our grants. But also there's more requirements from the board and donor constituencies. And as we think forward to the next replenishment, this is going to become even more important than the past to make sure that we're communicating, as fresh and recent data with different board and donor constituencies. So I'm going to now just pivot a bit to why donor reporting or why PR reporting is important. So if we go to the next slide and we think about our overall strategy. So this on the left-hand side, you would have seen this before, I'm sure, and you know it well. This is the Global Fund's strategy for 2023 to 2028. And what we're doing here is to increase the data quality in all of our different reports. We have data validation rules to reduce errors during submissions, which we'll talk about. We have ways to correct data later on. We have direct reporting through ADEX, elementary indicators. So there's lots that we're doing here to try to generally increase the quality of the data for the organization. Now, in the next slide, I'm going to take you through a bit about the key changes and kind of what we're doing with PR reporting and implementation oversight as part of this launch. So there's 4 pillars here that we'll drill into one by one, and I'll just orient everyone on this slide. In yellow is on data quality. So we talked about that in the prior slide. These are some of the key things that we're doing to improve the quality of the data that gets submitted to the Global Fund. In the center, in the blue, is we've adjusted our reporting rhythm. So we no longer have 4 pulse checks and 2 PUDRs in any given year. We've removed some of that duplication. And in terms of flexibility, we're building in sectional submission as part of this PU that's coming. That sections can be submitted when they're ready, not the entire report and having to wait for everything to be ready to submit. And then also the online reporting capability. So we have a fully online reporting solution for all of our reports moving forward. So that's just a little bit kind of high level of the 4 things. You'll see the new sign up and sorry, just back once. Yeah, the new logo, just to note, it's not that a lot of this you would have seen and know very well from the pulse checks, right? So in the pulse checks, we had data quality checks, but what is new coming in this with the PU is the items that are called out as new. So results correction, submission by section, these are new. The other items would be something that you would be already exposed to through the pulse check, and we're just going to be expanding. So data quality checks existed before, we'll be expanding them to the new data that's going to be included in the PU. So we'll talk about this all systematically, but I think this is a good high-level overview of some of the key changes and what's specifically coming new as part of the PU now. So let's go through them one by one. Let's start with the center section, integrated reporting. So what we're doing, as I had mentioned, is we're removing the duplication of reporting. So we're not no longer reporting a PU and a pulse check, a PUDR and a pulse check. So what will be reported in any given year within the three-year implementation period is what you see here. So Q1 is a pulse check, Q2 is a PU, Q3 is again a pulse check, and Q4 is a PUDR. Now, of course, this is for high impact and core portfolios, whereas the focus portfolios will follow as they do today, just the PUDR submission. Also important to note, and we'll talk about this a lot more in the closure section, is that the FCR report is also integrated as part of this reporting, and that comes at the end of the 3rd year of the implementation period. And here we show a little bit of what information is included. So in the pulse check, we're talking about selective programmatic data on some of the specific indicators that are in the grant. Financial reporting also in the pulse check. In the PU, that's where it gets expanded to include the grant management and PSCM sections, and that's the same in the PUDR. So this is a bit high-level overview of kind of how we're integrating the different reports into one system. And I'm going to now go quickly on the next page to share a little bit about today versus tomorrow, right? Or last year or last reporting system to the current. So before, a PR would report 4 pulse checks and 2 PUDRs in each of the 3 years of the implementation period. And starting in 2024, that's changing, as we had mentioned, that there'll be 4 reports in any given year. and the FCR at the end. Now, for C19, if you have a C19 grant that continues into 2024 and 2025, that grant or that IP will have to be reported separately from the GC7 grant. So you'll have to report a pulse check, for example, in GC7 and a pulse check for GC6 C19RM, and so on and so forth, for as long as there's an overlap between the GC6, or for as long as both are being implemented at the in parallel. So I think that's just really important to note that that both GC6 C19 and GC7 reports will have to be, or grants will have to be reported separately. Going to go to the next part is the online forms. So these are some changes that we're making that have the full. So I think the key message that I want to share here is the full. The entire reporting process is fully online, right? So you will access the partner portal through the email link that you'll receive, or through the other means through the partner portal, which Emily will talk about a bit later. You can enter all the data in the online form. You can complete all the data quality checks completely in the online form, and then submit the online form to the Global Fund. So all of that is happening fully on the online process. Now, there are 3 ways to extract and input data into this fully online process. The first is direct entry, right? So you can type in all the different data points, similar to how pulse checks have been completed earlier this year and for the past couple of years since pulse checks have been in. All of that can be entered fully online. There is also a supporting Excel where you can complete or fill in the information into the Excel file and then attach and import the data into the online form. And then importantly, there's also a copy and paste functionality that for the data heavy tabs, so there's currently 4 within finance, there's a copy and paste functionality, calling it the data import wizard, that will allow PRs to easily paste large sections of data from your own Excel into the online form. And for the data heavy tabs, that's also a recommended approach for how to bring in data. So you can directly enter it into the portal. You can have a supporting Excel file and use it to import into, oh, I think I'm hearing some, thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Direct entry into the online form using a supporting Excel tool that will help you to gather data within the PR and between the PR and SR, and then import that. And then again, the copy and paste functionality for the 4 specific finance tabs, which is recommended to be used in conjunction with the direct entry. So the full process is online, and there are tools to help you extract and input data into this online process. Now, it's important to note that the Excel file cannot be used for any submission to the Global Fund. The online form, after passing the data quality checks, which Emily will get into in more detail later, that is the submission to the Global Fund. So the Excel file, if it's used, any of the Excel files, those are not the submission to the Global Fund. They're the tools to help get information into the online form. Good. I think now I'm going to pass it to Emily, who's going to talk about results corrections, which is new in the PU. Over to you, Emily.
Thanks, Darius. So yeah, if we can now focus on the left-hand side of the diagram in the yellow boxes, we're going to zoom in on results correction. So from July 2024, coverage indicator results can be updated or corrected through the online PUDR form. So for example, results that were reported in the Q1 pulse check can be updated or corrected during the Q2 PU. So updates or corrections can only be made within the same IP year. And this is a new feature which will ensure more accurate reporting for the Global Fund to its donors. So now if we switch over to the purple side of the diagram and look at submission by section. So this is also something that's new from July 2024. So the PU will be organized into 3 different sections, and you can see the sections are color-coded on the slide. So we have programmatic in green, financial in yellow, and then PSCM and grant management in kind of a light purple. So the PR can submit each section when ready, which allows for results to be submitted to the Global Fund as quickly as possible for timely insights. So for example, if the programmatic section is completely ready, but you're still waiting on a few data points for the financial section, you can go ahead and submit the programmatic section of the report. So the report will only be considered fully submitted to the Global Fund once all of those sections have been submitted. So now moving to the PU content. And I think Darius, you'll take us through the first couple of sections.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, so here is a kind of zoomed out picture of all the different tabs that you'll see when you access the new PU. Now, important to note that the new logo here, this is not new compared to the past. This is just to say for those that have already completed a pulse check, you would have already seen and been exposed to coverage elementary indicators, for example, in the programmatic section or within the finance section, cash reconciliation and open advances. So that is the same as you had seen before, and what's coming new as part of the PU are the things that are indicated here. So let's start at the very top on the cover sheet. So the cover sheet, and here's a screenshot of it. No action is needed in this cover sheet. It's all view only. It's all pulling from other parts of the report, but it provides a very high level summary of data that's been included elsewhere in the report. So that's the cover sheet. Then if we go into the programmatic section, there's 4 tabs. So you've seen before the coverage elementary indicators. You've seen the coverage indicators, where the coverage elementary indicators flow into the coverage indicators, and work plan tracking measures. So that's exactly the same as before. And what's different is only the amount of coverage indicators and work plan tracking measures that are included in the report, and that's all based on what's in the performance framework. So if we go to the next slide, let's drill into that. So the PF is the driver of what indicators are due for reporting. So in the PU, you will be asked to report on all the indicators that are in your approved PF, in the latest approved PF. So it shouldn't be a surprise what those are, because those have all been pre-agreed before. And the reporting periods are aligned with the IP start and end dates. And for work plan tracking measures, what will be visible in the PU is based on the due date for reporting. So whatever has been agreed in work plan tracking measures for reporting within a given period, those are the ones that will be populated, and you'll be asked to provide an update on. The approach and the technical content of the PU is unchanged. So what I'd like to, maybe we talk quickly. Let's go to the next slide, please. Here, it's important to note that some indicators are provided on a quarterly basis. So these indicators will be aggregated using the accumulation type agreed for those particular indicators in the performance framework. And other indicators will be reported on semesterly basis. So it all depends on what's been set up and agreed in the performance framework. On the next slide, we'll drill into coverage, impact indicators. So here for impact indicators, as before, you enter the numerator and the denominator that's included, and provide any comments for the difference versus the target. So overachievement, underachievement, and in the comments to include to explain the performance, and then also to describe trends or mitigation actions to further strengthen those indicators. So you enter the numerator and the denominator and the comments. Now, in the next slide, we'll talk about coverage elementary indicators. So these, again, you saw in the pulse check, and these are for GC7 only, the elementary indicators. And basically the online platform and the supporting Excel, you enter the components of these indicators, and the coverage indicator will be pulled, and the calculation will be pulled for you and calculated in the coverage indicator tab. And then that's where you go into the coverage tab and you provide the justification or the explanation of the result. These coverage indicators, those that are due for reporting related to the coverage indicators, are pre-populated based on what's in the PF. So the benefit here is that you can enter the data once, because as we'll see later on, some of the elementary indicators are used in multiple coverage indicators. So you enter it once, and then the system calculates the overall coverage indicator based on the components that you enter. So this avoids duplication of data entry, but it also eliminates errors. We've seen in the past that the same component should be the same number in different places, but it's not. And in this way, we ensure consistent reporting and we eliminate errors. I think it's important to note that this coverage elementary indicators is not for GC6 or C19 grants, as well as it's not for GC7 custom indicators. So it's for the standard GC7 coverage indicators. And for the others, those that will not have an elementary indicator, they're reported as they are today directly in the coverage indicator tab. So let's go into a specific example, because I think it's very helpful to just see this, right? In the top left, you see the numerator and the denominator. The numerator is the top figure in the division, and the denominator is the bottom number. But if you see in this one example, TCS-1.1, number of people on ART at the end of a reporting period, this specific indicator, or this coverage elementary indicator, is actually used in two different places. It's used as the denominator of TCS-9, and it's used as the numerator in TCS-1.1. So that's, in the past, you would enter that one in a number of different places, and today you enter it once in the coverage elementary indicator tab, and then it pulls it correctly and does the calculation for you in the coverage indicator tab. So I think it's just important to kind of reflect on one specific example and kind of to help understand what is being done here. So it's entered once in the elementary coverage indicator tab, and then it's being used to calculate in the standard coverage indicator tab. Let's move on a bit. So for the standard coverage indicators, as we mentioned, those will be auto-calculated from the elementary indicators and then populated in the coverage indicator tab. For GC7 custom coverage indicators and for GC6 and GC6 indicators, both regular HIV, TB, and malaria indicators and the C19RM coverage indicators, those will have no elementary indicators, and the results will be entered directly in the coverage indicator tab. And the achievement ratio will be a calculated value based on the 6-month target in the PF. So that's very high level on the coverage indicators. But now let's move into work plan tracking measures. So these are pre-populated, as mentioned, if the target completion date falls within the reporting period. So if you have a target completion date that is May 30th, 2024, in the PU reporting period, that's January to the end of June, because that completion date, target end date, is within the period, then that work plan tracking measure would be included for you to report on. PRs will be asked to select one of 4 different options. Has this work plan tracking measure not started, advanced, or completed? And then, the score overall will be populated based on the statuses selected. Comments will be required on explaining the performance against those particular work plan tracking measures. And if we're behind or ahead, to explain the background behind that. Now, moving, I think this is the end of the, this is the end of the high level overview of the programmatic content. And now I'll pass it back to Emily to take you through the next section, the financial section. Over to you, Emily.
Thanks. Thanks, Darius. So if we focus now on the yellow line on the screen, so this is on the financial section. And again, just drawing your attention to the new symbol. So this is new compared to the PC. So it's not new in comparison to previous PUDRs, but just if you have completed the PC earlier than the year, these tabs will be new in relative to the PC. So if we move into the first tab, this is the cover sheet. So the cover sheet here is the same as what's in the previous Excel form that you've completed. So there's no changes, and the PR only needs to enter the exchange rates that are used. Moving into the cash reconciliation. So this is the same as the PC for those who filled out a PC earlier in the year. So the cash reconciliation captures relevant financial data to calculate the PR cash balance at the end of the reporting period. The overall structure is harmonized across all 4 quarters through the existing PUDR. The cash reconciliation tab is replicated in each reporting quarter in the same way, with the exception of the FCR. And again, we'll cover the FCR in the second half of the session. There are multiple funding sources in the cash reconciliation tab, and there's a new section on refunds. So if we look at the screens that you'll see in Partner Portal, the first thing we want to point out to you, same as it was in the PC, is that there's a vertical breakdown of the different types of source of funds. So the first column will always be the regular funds, followed by any other type of source of funds that you have, in this case C19RM funds, and then the total is automatically calculated. So looking at section 2, nothing has changed, and again you can see the vertical breakdown of funds. So the first part remains the same. And then the second part of the income section has been further detailed to show the relevant refunds to the PR. In the third section, again, nothing has changed, and you can see the vertical breakdown of sources. In the fourth and fifth sections, again, no changes. And then here in section B, we just wanted to point out 9.3 and 9.4, which are the variance between bank statement balance and PR cash balance, and the variance between bank reconciliation statement balance and the PR cash balance. So if there is a variance in either of these lines, a comment will be mandatory, and this is one of the data quality checks that we'll get into in more detail later. We've also added a few tips to this slide, and we'll be sending around the presentation after the session so that you can go through these slides in more detail. So moving into open advances, again, this is the same that you would have seen in the PC. So open advances are cash outflows for which no corresponding expenditure has been recognized by the PR. For Q1, Q2, and Q3, a simplified report on open advances is requested by funding source, where the more detailed reconciliation of open advances will be requested in Q4. And again, you can see regular funds, C19RM, and then the total is automatically calculated. So moving to the expenditure tab, so this is new in comparison to the PC, but this should be familiar for the PRs who have completed reports in the past. Here, the PR only needs to enter information for the current year. The cumulative expenditure is then calculated automatically. The screenshot that you'll see here has zoomed in on the breakdown by costing dimension, but the 3-dimensional breakdown remains the same. So when you go into the screens, you'll see the cost group, cost input, module and interventions, and then as well as the implementing entities. Next to the last financial tab of the PU, and again, this is new comparison to the PC. This has been simplified in comparison to what was in the GC6 PUDR template. So the PRs are to enter the non-compliant expenditures for the current reporting period here, but no taxes are to be reported here as these will be covered during the PUDR. And you can see on the left-hand side now, instead of the vertical columns for the source breakdown, we now have different tabs. So the PR can click on the regular funds to input their data, then they can click on the C19RN tab to enter the data there, and then the total will show them all the totals that have been calculated automatically. So moving into the final section of the PU, this is the PSCM and grant management section, which again is new in comparison to the PC, but is not new in comparison to previous PUDRs. So if we look at the first tab, which is on health products, the PU has been revised to incorporate 3 new PSCM metrics. So these are the quantification and forecast timeliness and comprehensiveness, grant procurement planning performance, and the stocked according to plan, or SATP. So the requirement to report on these new metrics applies to high impact and core portfolios for GC7 only, and the existing reporting requirements on PQR and risk of stockout and expiry apply to all applicable portfolios. Moving to the grant and risk management tab, so there's no changes here as to what's been in previous PUDRs. And for the final tab on self-assessment, again, there's no changes. So we will send around these slides after the session and you can read about these in more detail, but there should be no changes in comparison to previous reporting periods. So now that we've gone through the content of the PU, we'll switch and look at what the PU will look like in Partner Portal. So just to start off, here is a process flow diagram of the PR reporting process. So today we're specifically focusing on step 1, which is the PR completes and submits the online PU form. So there's now a new landing page in Partner Portal, and this will appear if the PR enters the web address directly into a browser. If the PR clicks on the notification that they receive in the email that the report is ready, it will take them directly to the report as always. But if the PR does log into Partner Portal directly using a browser, it will take them to this new landing page. So from this landing page, there are 2 options to access the report. Option 1 is to click on the All Applications button, and option 2 is to click on the tile of the grant you're reporting on as it appears in the landing page. So if they do click on option 1 and they click on the All Applications tab, it will take them to this page, which shows all the applications that the PR has access to in Partner Portal. From here, they can click on the Principal Recipient Reporting application, which will take them to that applications page. And if they want to add a quick and easy access to this main reporting application in the homepage, they can click on the star on the right-hand side, and this will add a quick link. So once in the Principal Recipient Reporting application, the PR will see a tile for each of the different grants that they can report on, and they'll just want to click on the tile of the grant that they want to complete currently. This will open the online report to this screen, which is the Submit tab. So this shows an overview of all the different content and sections included in the report. To actually access the online form and to start to enter data, the PR will click on Online Form, and this will open the PU in a separate tab. So next we'll move into how to enter data in the Partner Portal, and for this I'll ask Darius to jump back in. Darius?
Thanks. Thanks, Emily. Okay, so as we talked a bit earlier about how to get data into Partner Portal, there are 3 main ways. So I'm going to kind of break them down and go through them one by one. So direct entry, which is the simplest, which is the most straightforward, is simply doing what you do in the PU. If you need to extract the data for other purposes outside of the Partner Portal, you can manually extract the data for your working files. And then when you're ready to submit, you type in and you enter the data directly into the online forms. So that's the simplest and most straightforward. The next is, and there are some questions I saw in the chat on this, but we'll come back to the specific questions at the very end. But there's a supporting Excel option for the entire online form, so all the different sections that can be used to attach and import data into the system. So to download, use, and attach and import. So the 4 steps on that is the PR would go onto the online form, find in the download section the supporting Excel, which includes all the baseline data across the different tabs. Download it, use it within the PR, between the PR and SR, for internal review, validation, whatever the case may be, and then attach it back if they choose to, and then that would be imported into the online form, either one particular section or multiple sections. Now, and this can be imported multiple times. Now, it's important to note here that importing will override information that's already in the form, so please do be careful if you choose to use this. The third is copy and paste. So right now, that's the data import wizard is available for 4 financial tabs, 2 of which are as part of the specific, the PU, so the expenditure report and the cash reconciliation. So here, the PR can use their own working Excels. They can select the specific data that needs to be copied and pasted into the online form using the data import wizard, and then, of course, to review the pasted data in the online form. Now, this, for the data-heavy tabs, the copy and paste functionality is also recommended to be used together with the direct entry. So there's 3 ways to get data into, or extract and get data into the partner portal. None of these are mandatory, right? Just for example, the supporting Excel, this is not a mandatory way that the PRs have to do it. All the data, though, does need to get into the online form. So there's different tools to help PRs. Now, it's important to note, and I can't stress this enough, that any working Excel files, the supporting Excel, any tools that are being used as part of the data import wizard, any files that are being used, those are not the submission and cannot be submitted to the Global Fund. They can be used to get data into the partner portal form. And as Emily mentioned, there's the very important data quality checks, either blockers or errors or warnings that that all the data needs to pass through before submitting to the Global Fund. So let's go. I think we've covered the next slide, which is, yeah. So let's go now into data entry, specific data entry. So what you can do is you go into each of the different tabs. So you can open the little drop down, button on the left for programmatic financial or the PSCM section, and input your data. On the cover sheet, as we saw earlier, it's a read only, so there's no specific input that's needed. And as you'll see in the demo, when you're connected online, it's visible in green, and you can save data as you go through. So let's go then into the financial and the programmatic section as an example, right? You can open up, you kind of click the little arrow that's pointing at financial. It opens up the tabs that are below it, and there you can click on each tab individually and provide your results. And on the programmatic, the same thing. So in the coverage elementary indicator, you can click on the provide results, and then and we'll just click through once, and then you can see the pop-up where you can enter the specific the results directly in. And so let's look at an example on Open Advances. So there, if you want to enter data on Open Advances, you click on the specific tab. You see there 14.1 SR Advances, and you can type in the data directly in. Wherever there's totals or calculated fields, those all get calculated automatically as you fill it in. And it's important to note that as you click out of a particular cell, the data gets automatically cell by cell saved into the online portal. In the next section, the supporting Excel option, and again, this is an option only if the PR chooses to use it. It's not by any means mandatory. But let's go through the different steps of this. So the PR, again, will go in. You can see the specific sections where there's you can download the supporting Excel. You have all the baseline data that's provided for you. You can use it for whatever purposes are important to help you to submit to the Global Fund. And if you choose to import it, you can choose the file that's completed, attach it, And then, as you can see in the import, sorry, one step back, you can see the import and the little screenshot on the bottom right, programmatic financial and PSCM and grant management. So you can choose which specific section. So if you've only made changes to the programmatic, for example, or the financial, you can, or the PSCM section, you can choose just that one and upload it. And again, the data quality checks need to be clicked and passed before submitting to the Global Fund. The third method is copy and paste, so the data import wizard. And here, so let's go through and you can see the specific screenshots. So you use your own Excel file. You can then select what specific columns and rows you want to import from your or paste into the portal. And using the functionality that's there, you can paste it into those sections in mass. You can paste 1 or 2 rows or many rows. And here you can kind of see some of the screenshots of how you paste your Excel or your the data that you have in your CSV file and how you paste it in. And it's important to note that if you're using the copy and paste functionality, you need to make sure that the column, that there's a mapping of the columns to the source columns in the Global Fund systems. So this is the copy and paste functionality. Again, for the data heavy tabs within the financial sections, it's recommended to use this option in conjunction with direct entry. And this is, and that's the end of the section of the 3 ways to get data into the system. So I'll pass it to Emily to talk about data quality checks in more detail.
Thanks, Darius. So yeah, as Darius said, you can use any of the 3 methodologies to get data entered into the system. But once the data has been entered into the system, it doesn't matter using which methodology, all of it needs to go through these data quality checks. So the data quality checks, if you completed a PC, you'd be familiar with them, but the data quality checks are a set of automated actions that the system performs to flag irregularities. So these checks help to improve data quality, but also to help speed up the review process of the submitted data by the Global Fund. So there are 2 types of checks in Partner Portal. There are errors and warnings. So errors do not allow the PR to submit until the error has been corrected, whereas warnings just require a justification comment, and then the PR is allowed to proceed and submit, so it doesn't block submission. So one thing we wanted to note, and this was something that we noticed during the pulse check, is for programmatic results specifically, only enter a 0 when the result is 0. So if the result is not yet available, we ask if you please leave the cell blank, and then you can provide a justification comment. But a 0 should only be entered when the result is actually 0. So a full list of all the errors and warnings for each section will be included in the PR reporting handbook, and that will be published later in July. But we'll also have a full list of all the errors and warnings in the annex of these slides that we'll send after the session. So just to get into a few examples of the errors, here are some errors that you could see when you're filling out the programmatic section. So the action required for all these different errors is to update the values accordingly. So if you look at the first one, the CM8 denominator should be equal to the CM7 denominator. This would flag for you to go back and look at both values and to update them accordingly to make sure that they're equal. For the PSCM and grant management error messages, here's an example of what you may see. So this one says that additional information is required when stockout and expiry risks are selected. So for this, you'd need to provide a rationale in the comments field. So moving into examples for errors in the financial section. And some of these I had alluded to earlier when we went through the financial content. But for items number 9.3 and 9.4, where you see a variance between the bank statement balance and the PR cash balance, or the bank reconciliation statement balance and the PR cash balance, if there is a variance there, you'll need to provide a rationale in the comments field. So that's an error that you may see as you're filling it out. But also there are mandatory documents that need to be attached before you submit the form. And these mandatory documents will be flagged also as a data quality check, saying that you have to attach the document in the Attach tab before you can proceed and submit. So just a few examples of what the warnings may look like on the programmatic side. So the warnings, the action required will be to update the value or provide a justification comment. Again, you'll see examples here if a numerator is more than another numerator, just to go back and to double check. And if the results are correct, then you just provide a justification comment. On the financial warning side, as well as the PSCM and grant management side, you can see here that the actions required for these warnings, again, is just to update the value or to provide a justification. And just to repeat once more, the full list of all these errors and warnings will be included in these slides that we'll send out after the session, and also in the PR reporting handbook, which will be published later in July. So what does this look like in the partner portal? So once the data is entered, the PR can scroll to the top of the screen and they'll see this blue button in the middle, which says check data quality. So once they click on that button, then they'll see a summary of the number of errors and warnings on the right-hand side of the screen. So this was something that some PRs noted to us that it was difficult to find during the pulse check. So we just wanted to specifically point this out, that to expand the list of errors or warnings, you can click on the little down arrow just next to the words errors and warnings, and then that will expand the section to give you a full list of all the different errors and warnings faced in the tab. You'll see a description of the error or warning, and then also a place to provide the justification if needed for that specific error or warning. So once all data checks have been completed and all errors and warnings have been resolved, then the report is ready to submit. So to submit the report, you'll navigate back to the Submit tab, and here you can see an overview of all the different sections and all the different tabs within those sections, and if the data quality checks have been completed or not. So if an individual section is ready to be submitted, like we were talking about earlier, the financial section may be ready before the programmatic section, then you can submit that individual section by clicking on the white button next to the section name. Or if the entire form is ready to be submitted to the Global Fund, you can click on the blue button which says Submit Form to the Global Fund. So here's just a zoomed in view of what it looks like if you click on those little arrows next to each section. So here for the financial section, you can see that there's a green check mark next to each tab. So that means that all the data quality checks have been completed, and you can see in the information that there are no errors or warnings left. So this means that for every tab in the financial section, there are no errors and warnings, and this section is ready to submit. Whereas if you look at the PSCM and grant management section here, you have a white circle on the left-hand side. You don't have the green check mark yet, and the information says that the data quality check is required. So you would need to go to that section and complete the data quality checks, resolve any errors or warnings before submitting that section. So next we'll just look at a demo video of the sectional submission and how that works in Partner Portal.
Welcome to this demonstration where we'll show you how PR users can submit the online form to the Global Fund. Please note, the values presented are for demonstration purposes only and do not represent real grant data. I am logged in as a PR submitter and have access to my online form. I've finished inputting all my data, completed the data quality checks, and now I'm ready to submit. I can do this through the Submit tab. On this screen, we see a summary of the 3 sections of the form: programmatic, financial, and PSCM and grant management. Each of these sections can be submitted individually once they are ready, using the Submit section buttons here. If all sections are ready, the entire form can be submitted to the Global Fund using this button here. Please note that the submission to the Global Fund will not be considered complete until all sections have been submitted. When I expand the programmatic section, you can see that all tabs are showing a green check icon, which means that there are no errors or warnings for me to resolve. So this section is ready for me to submit. When I expand the PSEM and grant management section, I see that I still have one error in the Health Products tab. This will prohibit me from submitting this section. To know what the error is, I can click on the Go to Section button. This will bring me directly to the Health Products tab in the online form. I click on the down arrow here to expand the list of errors and warnings. And I see my error is linked to the risk of stockout and expiry table, where a rationale is required when a pharmaceutical or health product has a risk of expiry. To resolve this, I will enter a rationale in the comments field. Now that this error is resolved, I see that the tabs under the PSEM and grant management section are all showing the green check icon. Now I'm ready to submit the rest of my form to the Global Fund. I have received a message saying that my submission was successful. And now the status has moved to LFA Assurance Provider to review. Thank you for following along.
Just important to note that across the entire reporting timeline from when the PR receives and works on the online form to when it's finally completed, there are various different notifications that are embedded throughout the process to support everyone and to keep everyone aware of what's happening. So we're just summarizing here so that everyone can see very clearly at what stages you will get notifications. So it's not a surprise when it comes to your inbox. So this is a good reference slide to show you throughout the process when different notifications come. In the next slide, yes, so we're today here on July the 2nd. This is the external PR English information session. A similar version of this session will be conducted in French on Thursday morning, Geneva time. The target audience of this is PRs and CCMs. We'll also be having another information session at the end of July, specifically for LFAs, so that they're aware of the online tool, because similar to PRs, LFAs will also be using the online reporting system. So we'll have a session for them. And then the PUDR, which is still under development, and will be ready in the fall. That will have an information session. The exact date is to be determined, but probably sometime at the end of November or early December, there'll be an information session on the PUDR and how that process will look like. But it should be no surprise that it'll be very similar to the PU in terms of process and the data quality checks and the sectional submission and the data correction and all these great things that we talked about. The content, though, will be slightly different depending on the section. So this is the roadmap of the different information sessions that are coming. In the next slide, we'll talk about we'll just talk about the resources. So there's a lot of different resources that are available now, some now and some to come. We'll also be, and we heard from some PRs after the information session, it would be good to get an email with a link to all the key information and links to where they're published on the external website. So we'll do that. So just bear with us for a couple days while we finalize any remaining Q&As that come in the chat and adjust the recording. So we'll send you an email that includes all the relevant links, and of course they'll also be published on the external website. I think that's the last slide, yes, before we go into Q&A. And I see in the chat lots of questions coming up. So thank you so much for the engagement. Between me and my colleagues, we'll try our very best to answer all of them directly in this session. And if there's any follow-ups or clarifications that are needed, we'll come back to you very soon. So the first question was on the offline Excel. So the supporting Excel form, this was kind of modality 2 of the 3 ways to get data into the system. That the Excel form is needed for our internal validation and review process before directly entering into the portal. Is it possible for Global Fund to provide an Excel version of the portal template for us to work offline? This would be preferable for PRs to prepare and submit the report, because the internal validation and review process are vital for quality reporting. And question 2, similar to that, is there an Excel template in the portal so that we can use this offline as a working file, downloading and later uploading the file? So the answer is yes. There is an Excel file available, supporting Excel file available for the PRs should they choose, for whatever purposes, including internal review and validation, data collection, whatever is the specific use case for that particular PR. But it's important to note that the data still needs to get entered into the online form, either by importing it or by manually entering the data in the system, or using the data import wizard on the data heavy finance tabs. After that, the data and the submission will still be required to be subjected to the data quality checks. And there, as Emily mentioned, there'll be warnings and errors could be triggered, and the PR will have to, adjust, correct, clarify, whatever the case may be, depending on the specific error or warning that's triggered. And only then can the online form be submitted. And again, the Excel file, if it's used, is not something that can be the actual submission to the Global Fund. It's a tool to help for some of the things that were mentioned by the person who gave question 1. So question 3, is the PU going to be captured online as well, or only PC? All reports will be online. The PU, the pulse checks, the PUDR, the last PU, the FCR, all of those reports will be captured fully online. And the PU and PUDR and FCR have, in addition to entering the data directly into the online form, have the 2 other data entry modalities as we had discussed. Can a section submitted earlier be revised, edited before? So once a section is submitted to the Global Fund, it's blocked. It's frozen. Let's say that you can't change your submission after you make it. So please be careful. Please be careful when you make your submission that you're really sure that that's the final one. If, of course, there are still issues, you can reach out to the country team and it can be sent back and you can make corrections. But please be careful to submit only when you're really confident about it. And again, sectional submission is to allow data to come to the Global Fund as fast as possible. So if you're waiting on one data point on section B, that you can still submit section A and C, for example. You don't have to wait for every single data point to be finalized before submitting. Can we save an offline version of our submitted PU? Absolutely. So a PDF version will be available for the PRs to access and save for their records. 6, with the new arrangement of required reports per quarter, what is the positioning of the quarterly financial report? Is it still required? So I'll just read the answer, but Fadil and others, please jump in if I got something wrong. So the QFR is no longer required since GC6, and the forms here, the pulse check, the PU, the PUDR, have all the required information that the Global Fund needs. So no longer needed the QFR. Question 7. How about the disaggregation tab? We used to have an offline Excel version. Will this be? So disaggregations are no longer required or not required to report at the PU. So there's no tab for it either in the online form or in the supporting Excel should you choose to use it. And that will be available at the PUDR. So disaggregations will be reported at the annual PUDR. I think maybe we remove the hyphen between PU and DR. So the disaggregations would be included only at the PUDR, the end of the year. Like financial reporting, it would be very helpful if the PRs have one Excel form for the programmatic reporting and also a copy and paste option in the online form. So the Excel form, the supporting Excel modality 2 is available for all sections of the report, should you choose to use it. The copy and paste right now is limited to the 4 financial tabs, two of which are in the PU, but we really appreciate the feedback and we'll look at potentially expanding this functionality to other tabs in the future. But for now, it's available in those 4. Question 9, some of the impact outcome indicators for GC6 are due in January to June 2024. These are not included in the PF, and how Global Fund will I don't know the answer. I think if maybe I pass to any of my MECA colleagues if you want to come in on answer 9. If not, we'll try to put an answer there and send it to you, or we can come.
I can take that.
Thank you, Suman. Yeah, please go ahead.
Right. So if I understand the question correctly, it is about the impact and outcome indicators that are due post the grant end date. If that's my understanding, that if they are due in January to June 2024 in the GC7 implementation period, so those indicators are not reported. These indicators should be reported in the last PU. Or during the closure period, the report that the PR submits to the Global Fund, they can include the results for the indicators that are due after the end of the GC6 grant. They can be reported there. And if they are available even after that period, after the grant closure, then these will be used to set the baselines for the GC, the next PF, the next PF, and or when these same indicators continue from GC6 to GC7, those results can be used to set to report on the results for GC7. So depending on the timing of the availability of those indicators, they can either be reported in the last PU, or they can be used to set the baselines for the GC7 grant, or they can be used to report the results for GC7 indicators.
Thanks, Suman, and we'll put a written reply also into this when we send it back, before we send it back to you. Question 10, a survey was sent out to PRs by Global Fund teams regarding the shift to online reporting. We indicated strongly that an offline template for reporting should be maintained because using the offline template will make the data collection and internal review easier for the PR. So yeah, big thanks for sharing that feedback. It's important for us to hear directly from you on how you engage, or what would be helpful for you to submit, on time and with quality. And indeed, we have a solution that's an optional supporting Excel file to help with the point you mentioned. Let's go to 11. In the case of an NFM 3 grant ended, so that's a GC6 grant, which ended at the end of last year, which has a C19RM component continuing into 2024 and 2025. Which financial information would need to be included in the PU of C19? Will it only be the C19RM financial information, or is there an expectation that the GC6 final financial data will also be included? So if a grant ended at the end of last year, a GC6 grant, and it has C19RM continuing, For the June 24 period, there will be an FCR, which will also include, there will be an FCR which will also include the relevant sections for C19 reporting. There will be no separate PU for the financial parts. Maybe, I don't know if that's, yeah, Bogi, if you want to jump in, thanks.
Hey, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So indeed, if you had a regular grant that has ended already in December, and you have an ongoing C19RM that will end in the future, you would do an FCR now, and that same FCR will have the elements that will cater for the C19RM PU. So there is no separate additional reporting just for C19RM. You would do everything in the FCR. Once the regular grant is closed, then moving forward, the C19RM reporting will follow the usual reporting cycle. And at the end of it, there will be another closure of it, the same.
Thanks, Bogi.
Thank you.
And please, others correct me if I got this wrong, but I think this is for the financial section, so that there will not be a separate C19 or MPU for the financial part, but for the programmatic and other sections, there still will be a PU coming to you. So you won't have to enter the financial part in two different places, the exact same information. That would be captured in the FCR as was mentioned, but the programmatic parts will still come. Going on to question 12. Does this mean that the signature page will no longer be necessary? So the signature page is required for the PUDR and the final PU. Will it be possible for 2-3 specialists to work online simultaneously? Yes, not just 2-3. Anyone who is an editor can use the online form, even within one section simultaneously. I think it's just important to note as if you enter one and then enter values into a particular cell and a moment later somebody else enters it into those cells, the last update is the one that's saved. But all PR submitters or editors, have access. And in case you need additional access to the partner portal, for if you expect that there'll be more than what you currently have as editors, please submit the request through GED to add more editors or submitters if you need. 14, I'm going to pass this one to Larka, please.
Yes, thank you. So for the non-compliant expenditure, so if we are referring to section 10, that is basically the for the PR section. Here, what the PRs would include is their self-identified non-compliant expenditures, and also the if they identify anything within their SRs. And so LFAs and cities will have the separate sections for their own reviews. One more thing to mention, if the Global Fund communicated any non-compliant expenditure from previous periods, but the PR has not adjusted those, they would also need to repeat those in this section. Thank you, over.
And I think question 15 is also related to finance, and maybe you could continue to that one, please.
So we would need to provide a clear guidance on situation where GC6 bank statements are used for GC7. These FCR transactions and new grants are being operated the same account. Okay, so the separation of transaction and balances will have to be done in the bank reconciliation. There is a special section in the cash reconciliation tab. It's section 9, and this particular part is 9.2, where the PR would provide an attachment. It's one now. It's just one cell, but obviously this requires an attachment of the bank reconciliation between the different grants that are on the same account.
Question 16, for which portfolios is an LFA review required? So the LFA review process is going to be adjusted for GC7, and the LFA will be communicated directly by the CT with what the scope would be for the PU and the PUDR. So the LFA will be informed by the PR of what the specific scope is for each of the reports. But there still is a possibility of having an LFA review of the PU, PUDR, FCR, last PU of all the different reports. But it won't be exactly as it has been done in the past, that that all of those reports would have to have a complete LFA review. So it'll be dependent on the determination of the Global Fund of where the LFA review is needed. It'd be very useful if the Global Fund can provide guidance on how to fill in the online form, including what kind of data to be put in. So yes, detailed guidelines will be shared. There's a partner portal manual that will be shared with you for how to fill in the forms, and then also demo videos. Is there a limitation for the comment section? It's sorry, I'm just counting the zeros. Yes, 10,000 characters. Hopefully not every section needs to go to the full 10,000 limit, but yes, there is a limit. I think it's important to note to provide the necessary information there. And yes, the self-assessment section is available in the PU. It was removed from the pulse check. Can multiple people capture data online? So yes, as many users as have access to the platform can and have the rights as the PR editor can use the section simultaneously. Now for submission, obviously it's whoever has the submitter rights is the one that can submit specific sections or the entire form. Can the whole PUDR be imported and extraction is done for all sheets, or is it sheet by sheet? Sorry. PRs will be able to download the supporting Excel, which would contain all the different required information for reporting across all the different sections, including targets and relevant other information. And if the PR chooses, this Excel file can be imported for all the different tabs. But of course, there's other ways to extract the data. It can be done manually by copying and pasting, or done manually by tab. And as mentioned, there's also the data import wizard functionality that will allow for easy copying and pasting large amounts of data into the more data heavy financial tabs for now. Is supporting Excel the same as the existing PU template? It is quite similar to the previous Excel file. So yes, it's not exactly the same, but it's very similar.
Sorry, Darius, just wanted to comment on that if we can go back to the previous slide. So yeah, just wanted to note that the supporting Excel, although it's quite similar, please download the newest file from Partner Portal instead of using an old template when you're using the supporting Excel, just to make sure that the import feature in all the supported data model behind the Excel form are the newest and latest that are compatible with the system. So just a flag. Yeah.
Thanks, Emily, for mentioning that. Absolutely. That should, it's very important that the only Excel that you can use, if you choose to use it, is the one that's available in Partner Portal. The structure has changed, and you will not be able to, even with the old one, you won't be able to see the current targets or anything, and even the elementary coverage elementary indicators, for example, and so on and so forth, all the other things that we've talked about. Is there a deadline? There must be a deadline for PU submission. There is. It's 45 days after the end of the reporting period. So that would be August 14th. And that's the same also for the FCR. So just to say, or we'll talk the FCR later, in case the PR is not able to meet that deadline. So in case of issues, and I think maybe we're adding two, but just to say, the deadline is 45 days. If there are issues meeting that deadline, this will be handled on a case-by-case basis with the CT. And if there are support needs within the Partner Portal, country support as today is the channel to reach out to for help. Can sections be updated? I think we talked that one earlier. So, sorry, corrected after uploading. So if you attach and import sections, you need to go through the data quality checks in the online form. And as part of that process, if there are warnings or errors or things that are adjusted, they can all be adjusted. But once they're submitted to the Global Fund, that section becomes locked and can no longer be changed. If you really do need to change something, again, reach out to the country team and it can be then rolled back and you can make the correction. Are there formula links or error warnings present on the downloaded form similar to the offline? So there are formulas and calculations embedded into the supporting Excel file, but it's not the same as the data quality checks that we have in the online form. So again, the Excel file is only a supporting tool to help you collect information and review, validate, and import data into the system. But the online form is the final form that you're submitting to the Global Fund after passing all the data quality checks. What are the support arrangements for PRs during the forced report? Who should we contact? So country support. So it's not just for the first reporting using the online tool. It's for all reports moving forward. Country support is the place to go to for help. But it's important also to note, as we had mentioned, this PU is new being in the online form, but it's very similar to what you have already successfully done with the pulse check, right? The new pulse check follows a very similar process as the PU. And of course, there's new sections, as we saw earlier, new sections that are added, new content. There's some new functionality around data correction and sectional submission, but the look and feel and the process is very, very, very similar to the pulse check.
Darius, also to note that in the partner portal where you see the submit tab and attach and online form, there's also a help tab. And if you click on the help tab, it actually prompts a window which has the email to the country support team as well. So if you're experiencing any issues in the partner portal, you can click on the help tab. Thanks.
Yeah, so once the section is submitted, it's locked. But again, as mentioned, you can go back through the country team to request it to be rolled back, and then you can do it. So please just be careful that when you're submitting, you're very sure that that's your final submission. Sign off by the head of the agent. The sign off is for the PUDR and the final PU only. If a PR enters data directly into the form, the first method of the three, is there a way to export all the entered data into Excel or other format for a final check? So the supporting Excel will only include they won't include any of the submission data. It's a file that's used at the start. So once the PR submits the form, a PDF will be generated. We are trying to see if we can have an option to have the PDF generated earlier, but that's still TBD. But definitely once it's finally submitted, the online once it's submitted, the PDF will be generated. When do we expect to receive notifications of the PUs being available online? So as soon as it's available and shared, you'll get an email. And it's important so it'll be in July. The exact date is still not fully defined yet, but we'll inform you immediately the moment the forms are available. Please do, though, in the meantime, if you need more editors or submitters, and make sure that there's at least, those that are there are the correct ones. And if you need more editors and submitters, please do go through the GED process to update. I also want to mention, and it I think was shared already in the invite and will be shared as part of our follow-up, but we'll have a mock-up already of all the content of all the different forms. This is kind of a generic mock-up that you'll be able to see, for example, in the financial section, all the specific points that you will need to complete. The same for the programmatic and PSCM section. So you can already acquaint yourself with the data or the content that will need to be provided, and that has already been shared, but will be included also as part of the package that we share with you after this info session 30. So if the LFA is in scope, there'll be a 20-day period as today that the LFA can complete their scope and then submit to Global Fund their conclusions. So there are different rights. So there is an editor and a submitter, but the same user cannot have both the editor and the submitter rights. So the editor is the one that can enter information, import, and the submitter is the one that can press the submit section or submit the entire form to the Global Fund. So please check your GED that it's up to date, and you can do that already today to make sure that it's updated so that when the email notification comes to you, you're all set up and ready to go. 32. The CCM lacks access to the online forms. How are we planning to ensure access to the CCM? Thank you for the feedback and the question. So the CCM will be informed once the submission has been taken place, and the CCM can reach out to the PRs to receive copies of it should they wish. And we're looking over the next while to see how further access can be given to CCMs to the partner portal. But for now, they're informed of the submission, and that way they can reach out to the PRs directly for this. Are there specific times when the portal is open and closed? If so, what is the procedures for the PR needed to follow up to update? So the partner portal is 24/7, and the PRs can access the form is the moment it's submitted or shared by the Global Fund, and again reach out to country support. And yeah, 34. When are you planning to send the Excel templates? So a preview is available right now in English, and the email notification will come to the PRs as soon as the forms are ready to go. So it'll be in July. The exact date hasn't been determined yet, but you'll get it the moment it's available. The notification will go out. And please again acquaint yourself. Even now with the PU and FCR content, it's available on the website, and we'll be sharing it. What is the submission deadline? It's 45 days. This 45 days remains because, and it's important to note, the data is important for all the reasons that we mentioned at the very beginning, and in particular for there's deadlines coming in September and October for the boards and committees, and this information is very much needed for that. So the submission deadline right now is the 45 days. Can we have a demo of the disaggregation data? So this will come as part of the PUDR, which will be in November and December, depending on the exact scheduling. At which extent, sorry, I didn't fully, PU will be auditable. So the assurance scope generally, and as I mentioned briefly, the country team will specifically tailor the assurance scope for the PU, for the FCR, for the PUDR, for all of the reports outside of the pulse check, based on the specific portfolio context and needs. So for the PU and the finance section, no, there will be no LFA review. However, if the CT determines that a review will be needed, it will be for the CT will inform the LFA and to inform them of what their scope will be. But for the financial section of the PU, there's no LFA review. For the FCR, however, there will be an LFA review of all of the FCRs. We'll talk about the FCRs a bit later. Regarding the first PU for GC7, should the expenditure report compare the annual budget to the semi-annual expenditure? I'll pass it to my finance colleague, Bogi, please. Okay.
So on the PU, so basically the expenditure report, yes. So you will have a 6 months expenditures, obviously, against a 12-month budget. But at the PU, basically we just want to have some insights of the progress of the PR's implementation. And at the PUDR or at the FCR, this is when we see the cumulative budget against the cumulative expenditure. And now that one of the new things is that you only provide explanation on the cumulative basis and with the variance of plus or minus 15%.
Sorry, can we just go to 39? Or did we capture both of those? Oh, yes, sorry, 15%, yeah. 40? Can we have the slides on the Q&A as there's an internet? Yes, absolutely. The slides will be published on the website shortly once we fill in a few of the missing ones, and will also be included in the email summary that we'll be sharing. For C19, that will be included in the FCR and that is continuing. Will subsequent financial reports be cumulative of expenses reported on the FCR? I'll just read the answer, but Bogi, please, or feel free to step in for.
Okay, so basically the way the FCR is going to look like, you will have what the cash reconciliation is the only tab where you have the two funding sources side by side, like two columns, but all the other parts of the report will have duplicated sheets, basically duplicated tabs. So once you finish the HTM or the regular grant, the subsequent reports for the continuation of the C19RM, you will only have one tab left to fill in. So for the expenditures and for all the other parts of the PU or PUDR, only the C19RM portion will pop up in the online form, and that's what you will need to fill in. So obviously the accumulation of the expenses will be only for C19RM.
Thanks. And just to note, in case anyone is coming in for the second section on the FCR, we're just concluding the Q&A portion of the PU section. So please hang in there with us, and we'll pivot to the FCR in just a few moments. Can the PU and PUDR be reported on continuous manner of coverage indicators? Suman, I don't know if you can step in on this question. I'm not sure if I
okay, no, I was trying to
please
respond in the chat, but yeah, okay, I will take that. I'm not very sure about what it means, but the way the results will be reported for coverage indicators in the PU and PUDR, they will follow the same approach as we currently have. The only difference is that it will be possible for the PRs to update the results of in the PU. So and in Q2 for the PU and in Q4 for the PUDR, which means that at Q2 when they are reporting on the PU, they will be able to update the Q1 results as well at the time when they are submitting the Q2 results. So for the quarterly indicators, there is a possibility to update the Q1 results at the time of the PU. And when it comes to the PUDR, they will have a possibility to update the results for both for all the previous quarters, which means Q1, Q2, and Q3. And for the semester indicators, the indicators that are reported on a 6-monthly basis, they will be able to update the semester 1 result when they are submitting the PUDRs. So if that is what is meant by continuity, that will be possible for them to have the latest results available that they have with them. They can report to the Global Fund.
Thanks. I think for 43, there'll be a notification that'll be sent. Please do, as mentioned, look at the mock-up so that you're aware of what the content is before the reports come out. Are there any more questions in the Q&A? There's, I think, one more final question. Okay. The FCR basically focuses on commitment. Okay, Bogi, this is for you, please. And then this will be the last question before we take a pause. If you still have remaining questions, feel free to use the chat. We'll add them later, but we'll pause after the answer from Bogi and take a 5-minute break.
Okay, thanks. So the FCR basically focuses on commitments recorded in the 23 PU. There's a need to provide guidance on the applicable FX rate to apply when documenting the FCR, especially when there is a change in the FX rate after the last PU. Trying to understand, because your FX rate, you would be, okay, hang on. Fadi, you want to come in on this one? I'm just trying to understand the question itself.
Yeah, so basically when commitments are recorded in the PU, so they are recorded at a certain exchange rate, but then in the FCR is where you actually record the liquidation of those commitments. And the liquidation should happen at the actual exchange rate, which was used to finalize the transaction. So then any adjustment that results in the commitments that were liquidated against the commitments that were recorded need also to be adjusted in as expenditures also in the period. So giving an example, let's say commitments at December 2023 were of 10,000, but then due to exchange rate movements, now these the same commitments have been liquidated for 12,000. So what will happen is that there needs to be an adjustment of 2,000 upwards in the expenditure, knowing that commitments were already recorded there. So it is appropriate during the FCR to actualize the commitments according to the rate at which they were paid. And remember that at the end of the reporting period, there should be no open commitments. Anything that has not been liquidated will be moved to the next reporting cycle, so GC7. But then the commitment that has not been liquidated needs also to be adjusted downwards in the expenditure report. Thanks, over.
Thanks, Fadiel, and we'll put a written answer when we send this out. Emily, should we give still a 5-minute break?
Yeah, I think so. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone for following along and being so engaged and asking questions. We really appreciate your engagement and your attention. So we are going to take a 5-minute break, and once we come back, we'll pivot into closures and FCR. So for those who don't have a grant in closures and want to drop off, thank you again for joining us, and we'll send around the recording and the slides after the session. And for those who are joining for the FCR and closure portion, we'll see you back in 5 minutes.